Okay, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Brenda Arthur Miller, and I'm the Director of Dual Language, as well as ESL, and also the high school principal. So more hats than I normally wear, but it's going okay so far. So we are going to record this meeting tonight so that it can be shared on the district's YouTube channel for those people who were unable to make it, and or if we talk too fast, you can go back and review later, right? So normally in the spring, we have a dual language informational meeting at the ice cream social, but that didn't happen last year. And so tonight we want to welcome you to dual language. Your kids are already in the dual language program, so this is really just meant to be kind of an informational meeting, but also allow you a chance to answer some questions at the end, ask some questions at the end, excuse me. And also, we have two of our kindergarten teachers here, and they're going to talk a little bit about content and curriculum, and we'll answer questions at the end. So, before we start, I always just like to give a plug for West Liberty Community School District in general, and that is that just no matter your students are in dual or not in dual, whatever programs they're in, we do have high quality education. It's one of the things that keeps me here. I'm in my 11th year as an administrator in this district and truly can't imagine being anywhere else. So I just wanted to give that plug for West Liberty in general. Brian, do I have to tell you when to click slides? Click. There we go. Thank you. So we're going to start with just a short video on the benefits of being bilingual. If we can jump to the YouTube video.
Hablas español? Parlez-vous français? 你会说中文吗? If you answered sí, oui, or 会, and you're watching this in English, chances are you belong to the world's bilingual and multilingual majority. And besides having an easier time traveling or watching movies without subtitles, knowing 2 or more languages means that your brain may actually look and work differently than those of your monolingual friends. So, what does it really mean to know a language? Language ability is typically measured in 2 active parts, speaking and writing, and 2 passive parts, listening and reading. While a balanced bilingual has near equal abilities across the board in 2 languages, most bilinguals around the world know and use their languages in varying proportions. And depending on their situation and how they acquired each language, they can be classified into 3 general types. For example, let's take Gabriella, whose family immigrates to the US from Peru when she's 2 years old. As a compound bilingual, Gabriella develops 2 linguistic codes simultaneously with a single set of concepts, learning both English and Spanish as she begins to process the world around her. Her teenage brother, on the other hand, might be a coordinate bilingual, working with 2 sets of concepts, learning English in school while continuing to speak Spanish at home and with friends. Finally, Gabriella's parents are likely to be subordinate bilinguals, who learn a secondary language by filtering it through their primary language. Because all types of bilingual people can become fully proficient in a language, regardless of accent or pronunciation, the difference may not be apparent to a casual observer. But recent advances in brain imaging technology have given neurolinguists a glimpse into how specific aspects of language learning affect the bilingual brain. It's well known that the brain's left hemisphere is more dominant in analytical and logical processes, while the right hemisphere is more active in emotional and social ones. Though this is a matter of degree, not an absolute split. The fact that language involves both types of functions, while lateralization develops gradually with age, has led to the critical period hypothesis. According to this theory, children learn languages more easily because the plasticity of their developing brains lets them use both hemispheres in language acquisition. while in most adults, language is lateralized to one hemisphere, usually the left. If this is true, learning a language in childhood may give you a more holistic grasp of its social and emotional contexts. Conversely, recent research showed that people who learned a second language in adulthood exhibit less emotional bias and a more rational approach when confronting problems in the second language than in their native one. But regardless of when you acquire additional languages, being multilingual gives your brain some remarkable advantages. Some of these are even visible, such as higher density of the gray matter that contains most of your brain's neurons and synapses, and more activity in certain regions when engaging a second language. The heightened workout a bilingual brain receives throughout its life can also help delay the onset of diseases like Alzheimer's and dementia by as much as 5 years. The idea of major cognitive benefits to bilingualism may seem intuitive now, but it would have surprised earlier experts. Before the 1960s, bilingualism was considered a handicap that slowed a child's development by forcing them to spend too much energy distinguishing between languages, a view based largely on flawed studies. And while a more recent study did show that reaction times and errors increase for some bilingual students in cross-language tests, it also showed that the effort and attention needed to switch between languages triggered more activity in, and potentially strengthened, the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. This is the part of the brain that plays a large role in executive function, problem solving, switching between tasks, and focusing while filtering out irrelevant information. So, while bilingualism may not necessarily make you smarter, it does make your brain more healthy, complex, and actively engaged. And even if you didn't have the good fortune of learning a second language as a child, it's never too late to do yourself a favor and make the linguistic leap from hello to hola, bonjour, or ni haos. Because when it comes to our brains, a little exercise can go a long way.
Okay. So when we talk about dual language, some background music. Okay. So when we talk about dual language, just to kind of clarify for you all, it's a form of education where students are taught both literacy and content in 2 languages. The majority of dual language programs in the United States are actually English and Spanish, which is our program. Although we do see increasing numbers across the United States of with other languages than Spanish. Our philosophy promotes both Spanish and English as languages of equal value, and we feel that by placing importance on both languages, we're not only preparing our students for the multilingual, multicultural world we live in, but they're also learning the importance and value in respecting excuse me, other cultures in our increasingly global society. So then when we talk about why dual language for West Liberty, just to give you a little bit of a history then, in 1998 and 1999, the district had a 28% population of English language learners, so students whose first language was a language other than English. And so that was kind of the motivation behind implementing the dual language program. We were looking at a way to provide services for our English language learners. Last year, our ELL population was at 25%, so it's remained pretty steady since we started the program 21 years ago. So the primary purpose of our program is to serve our English language learners. Currently, about 1 out of every 4 students in West Liberty schools speaks a language other than English as their first language. The majority of those students speak Spanish as their first language. And so we implement the dual language program. The goals for our program are threefold: to increase the English proficiency of English language learners while maintaining and building their native language, to help students become bilingual, biliterate, and multicultural, and finally, to help students achieve academic success in all content areas. So then I wanted to talk a little bit about the model that we have at the K4 model, or K5, I guess, technically. We have math, literacy, and social studies in Spanish at the K2. And so that would be all year long. So your students in kindergarten will have math in Spanish all year long. They'll also have then social studies and a literacy block in Spanish. And so then their English classes would be literacy again, and then science. In grades 3, 4, and 5, we flip that. So they have science and literacy in Spanish, and then their math and social studies, and then literacy again are in English. We switched this model probably 5 years ago. We switched to this model 5 years ago. What we have found is with maintaining a content in one language all year long, students are able to develop their vocabulary in that it's stronger. It also gives us the opportunity to then bridge to the other language. So for building vocabulary and math in Spanish, we can then bridge that to English. And we know, for example, with math, that students watching TV or listening to the radio are going to be exposed to lots of numbers already in English. So by building that in Spanish, we find that they are more successful. When we get to middle school, then the program switches from a 50-50 model to more of a 30-70 model, if you will. The students take 2 classes in Spanish in grades 6, 7, and 8. They have social studies or world cultures in Spanish, and then they also have a Spanish literacy class. What they do when they get to middle school is we're starting to switch from that where the content is specifically in Spanish and English to more of a developing their Spanish to move them onto a fast track for advanced placement and college credit. So then when they come to the high school here, they start in Spanish 3 or dual language Spanish 3. They have Spanish 3 and 4. Then they take a concurrent enrollment class with Muscatine Community College, and that's Spanish 5. So they earn 6 college credits as juniors. And then their senior year, they take advanced placement, Spanish language, and culture. And so students who get to high school, if they finish that dual language 4, that equals 4 years of high school Spanish for college. So as I was saying before, it kind of gets them on that fast track, if you will. And then if they go through their junior year, they already earn community college credit, which transfers to 4-year institutions. And then advanced Spanish language and culture, I'll talk about those results in a little bit, what that looks like and how students earn college credit that way as well. So then the next slide really talks about family commitment, and this is one of the big things we hit when we have the ice cream social. We're asking you, if you're committing to dual language, that you make that commitment through at least 5th grade. In recent years, we've had a waiting list for our dual language program, and so those families that get in, we ask you to commit to 5th grade because we wouldn't add anybody after 1st grade. So if you decide that it's not for you, that's really a space lost, if you will. So that's part of why we ask families to commit. We also ask you to commit knowing that there will be struggles, right? So we want you to expect struggles from your children as they are learning a second language. Most children go through a silent period where they may not speak in either language, right? But that doesn't mean they're not learning. It's that their brain is busy processing and listening and accumulating vocabulary and connecting that vocabulary with words they already know. And we see that silent period eventually go away. And for some students, it's very short, and for some students, it might be a little longer. We also know students struggle in reading in one or both languages. Not all students, but we do see it in a fair share of students where they may be behind a grade level or even 2 grade levels in their Spanish reading comprehension or in their English reading comprehension. What we know is that that evens out and they excel and go further. It just takes a little longer because, again, their brain's working twice as hard building that literacy both in Spanish and in English. So there is a link here to a very short article that talks about that silent period. It gives some advice on things that you can do to help your students through that. Our kindergarten teachers are going to talk about that also. So the link to the article will be shared in the video or that's pushed out on YouTube later, but it's a very short article, but it does give some nice suggestions on how you might help. But I'm not going to tell you those because I know Amanda's going to talk about them. So, okay. So then I talked a little bit about the success we see long term. Our students that complete the program and go all the way through their senior year, they take the Advanced Placement Spanish Language and Culture exam in the spring of that. And what we see is, for about 5 or 6 years running now, 100% of those students earn a 3 or better on the Advanced Placement Spanish exam. Now what that means is a student that earns 3 or better, so it goes to 5, a 3, a 4, or 5 automatically earns college credit. It depends on which college they go to, how much credit they earn. But we do have students, if they earn a 5, they could have as many as 12 or sometimes 15 college credits already in Spanish when they go on. So it really depends on the university, but it guarantees them college credits by earning at least a 3 or better. So what we know then is that that doesn't happen magically in their senior year when they're taking Advanced Placement Spanish Language and Culture. That is the work of the kindergarten teachers all the way through. So it's long-term, in my opinion, it's long-term success that we're seeing there. And yeah, so even last year in a pandemic, when the bulk of our students at the high school were virtual learners, 100% of those students all earned a 3, a 4, or 5 on the AP test. So again, not just because of one class, right? So now I'm going to pass the mic to Amanda Doffelt.
Hello, I am Amanda Doffelt, and prior to these last 2 years, my primary role here at the elementary, or at the ELC rather, was being the ESL teacher. So I would be either pulling small groups of kiddos to work in small groups with me to help with their English skills, or was lucky enough to get paired up with Ms. Herman to push in and co-teach with her during the literacy block so that the students had both English and Spanish modeled for them during that literacy block. This year, I am the English component to the dual language. So for those of you who have me, they are with me for all of the English literacy and science, and then they switch to Mrs. Bailey's classroom for all of their Spanish instruction. And the slides that I have here to share with you just kind of show, they're just little reminders of how important it is to remember that it doesn't matter what language you're speaking with your child, just make sure that you're speaking. That's probably one of my biggest roles as an ESL teacher, is to get the students talking as much as possible. We do a lot of repeating after me in the classroom. We do some activities. One of the ones that I learned from Ms. Herman is called Hey Partner, where the students have to practice listening and speaking and share out what their partners are saying, not what their idea is. So just really getting the students using whatever language it is, whether that be Spanish or English or another language. And the next slide is actually a poster that I have up. Ooh, not that one, sorry. One back. Yep, right there. Just another reminder, I know that sometimes when you're speaking with your child at home, you may ask them one question, and when you give them the answer, you're done, and you move on to something new. And this is the poster I have up in my classroom to help me remember as well. The bottom just says that when you're on a walk with your child while you're reading books or driving in the car, don't just ask them what they see. You might follow that with, what does it look like? What can you tell me about it? What else can you tell me about it? Just getting them to be producing more and more language. As I said, in English or in Spanish. We just want to get them talking as much as we possibly can, and that's probably one of my biggest areas that I work with in my classroom.
I am Miss Herman, and I teach in a self-contained, so my kids are with me all day long. And we start our day with a couple hours of Spanish and then go to recess, and then they have English after that. So one of the things that we love to do and that gets them talking and interacting is singing songs. So I just put some of our favorites up there. When you get this, they're all linked, so you can just click on them and the kids can hear them and sing them. They're ones that we know a lot. There's alphabet ones, there's movement ones, there's like the Barney El Camion has a bunch of vocabulary, so different themes that we're lurking on. He has a firefighter one that we've already listened to this week that they're talking about the uniform and being able to do it, and the kids don't even realize that they're really practicing the vocabulary. They don't understand that, oh wait, we are actually counting quantities, or we're doing math, we're doing numbers. It's just fun. So that is a way that we build language frequently, and I'll even catch them singing it later on. So if we read a book, they might hear the book, but when it's a song, then it's coming back in their brains and they're singing it again and again. On the next slide, we just have some of our English favorite ones. Because even though math is taught in Spanish, throughout the day we're doing English numbers. We're counting things in the room. We're lining up by numbers. We're counting how many friends are at school today or how many days until this. And so even if my content is taught in Spanish, numbers and shapes and all of those things are still happening in English throughout the day as well. And then we just wanted to end with some of the learning targets for the year. So to show you that, for example, yes, math is taught in Spanish, but our goal is that they can count to 100 in English and in Spanish by the end of the year. That they can identify and write numbers from 0 to 20 in both languages. That they can complete addition and subtraction through 5. That they can identify 2D and 3D shapes. So our state testing that we do for math is done in English. Our unit testing that we do is done in both Spanish and English. So, but the state has us do it in English. And then for English reading, we want them to be able to name all the letters and sounds, to be able to write to share an opinion or a fact, to label pictures and describe them with details, and to ask and answer questions and provide the details. So it's so important for us that they're speaking and that they're writing it. And then the next one is that it's the same in Spanish. So the biggest difference between English and Spanish is that Spanish is all syllables, and so it's a lot easier for them to chunk their words versus being able to sort the vowels. And I will say, as a teacher, your vowels are going to be your trickiest thing, and if they used to know what letter A said and now they don't, it's because we spent the last 5 weeks working on vowels. So it will come back, I promise. But when they're writing cat and they put in, cat's not a good example, if they're writing dig and they put in an E instead of an I, they're working on it, it's coming, and it will eventually get there. So don't worry. Any questions? So I know that was short, but we wanted to just give you a little taste. This is definitely a time for questions if you have them, and it can be something that you saw or something else that's burning, whatever that may be. What I'll just ask is that you give me an opportunity to repeat that question since we are recording. That way we can make sure our audience as well can hear it. So any questions? Okay, so the question is, at what point would you expect that your child would start speaking in the second language, right? So I think when we talk about language development, we know that listening and speaking come first, right? So that's part of that silent period where they're absorbing and going to spend a lot of time listening and processing, right? I think that it's not too early to push or ask or, can you tell me hello? Can you name your colors? Can you count to 10? Some of that, it's definitely not too soon. But it also might be one of these things where you hear uno, dos, tres, four, five, six, because again, they're still, and it's language, and that's what we want. So, so I don't know if there's no determined, they're going to magically do it when they turn 6 in 2 days. It really depends on the student, and, however you can help them experience more of the other language or any language would definitely help that too. So if you can play some of those songs that count in Spanish or do colors in Spanish, that'll definitely help too. Hold on.
Well, I was just going to add too that being the English side of dual language, I'm already hearing some of the students in my classroom try to experiment with using Spanish. It may not be clear Spanish that they're using, but they're trying, so you can tell that the interest level is super high right now. So I definitely agree that any even small encouragement that you can ask your child to tell you something that they learned in Spanish, because they're definitely using it in my classroom when it's their English time. So, and it's kind of fun for me to hear and try to piece together what it is that they're, and it's also like the children speaking to one another, because I have several students in my class who are native Spanish speakers. So the kids are trying to communicate with their friends now that they're kind of getting this little bag of tricks that they're learning in their Spanish block. So it's fun for me to be able to see that interaction with the kids, but it's kind of already beginning.
I would just say that acquisition in general takes 3 to 5 to 7 years. So as far as a full, truly entire conversation, you've got a ways. But at the same time, they're picking up those words and they're using those things over time to say what Brenda was saying, part Spanish, Spanish, English, Spanish, or opposite, and that's okay. Translanguaging is an okay thing, and it's part of that process of learning 2 languages.
Translanguaging, that's a fun term too. So translanguaging used to be, and that's one of the things that I find most interesting in my study of language, is that it's always constantly changing. Translanguaging used to be something that was sort of taboo and you didn't talk about. It's the idea that students are using all of their language capabilities to communicate. And so it may be some Spanish, it may be some English, it may be something in between. But that's definitely something we encourage because it's language production. So, question? Okay. Great question. So the question was, because we teach math in Spanish for the first 3 years, would parents perhaps run into difficulties helping with homework? I would say definitely not at kindergarten and first grade, and probably not at second grade. But if there are some challenges, we encourage you to reach out to the teachers, send them an email, or contact them through Seesaw, and we would work on getting them the help they need. Most of the, I think, things that would come home would be something students had practiced in class and should be able to do on their own, or with a little bit of guidance. Yes, so the question is, are there helpful tricks for down the road, maybe after kindergarten? And I would say yes, we have some links on the website that perhaps need to be updated, but I'll go in and double check them. That are some homework help, or some some ideas on how to help your student if they're struggling. One of the other things we like to do when students get older is work on building that family connection with school or family connection with other families. So maybe we have a strong Spanish-speaking family that we would partner with a not so strong Spanish-speaking family so that they could maybe help each other with homework or also just in general, I don't necessarily recommend Google Translate, but there are some great translation sites out there that can help with directions or help with some of that. There's one that's called Spanish Dictionary that does a very nice job in translating if you need to translate directions or that sort of thing. Just don't let your students turn in homework from that, because that gets them in trouble for sure. So.
I definitely agree with the family connections. I know last year was very difficult for a lot of families, with quite a bit of it being virtual, and parents that were struggling and trying to help their students with homework that was being sent home. And I even know just through Facebook, I would see messages of parents really needing help. They weren't understanding, and this community is pretty amazing in that way. And there were parents that may not have even known the person who originally posted that were offering to help or saying, give me a call, I can help you with that. So definitely continue reaching out, because like I said, the community is amazing in that respect, and everybody is kind of here to help. So that's another great way to get a little help with the problems that you're having.
También quiero decir, preguntar si hay más preguntas y si prefieren preguntarme en español, podemos responder también. Are there any other questions? If not, please know that my contact information is here on this last slide, and also, I think you all know how to reach out to your children's teacher as well. Email is probably the easiest way to get a hold of me, and I'm happy to answer questions and find the answers anytime. So, if there are no other questions, then gracias por venir, and have a great evening.